Bryce Mitchell made some wild comments on his first podcast that has taken the internet by storm. Jake Paul blasts UFC president Dana White as he makes his venture into boxing. I look forward to seeing how that turns out, for sure. Also, Sean Strickland versus Khamzat Chimaev. Is this a possibility? Well, Sean Strickland seems to think so. But guess what? He should be more focused on Dricus du Plessis. We got these topics and more next.
Broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA Podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
Whoa!
Dana White privilege.
Let's go, baby! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Dana White privilege. Privilege. Privilege.
Welcome to the TCMMA Podcast. It's your boy, Chris Cross. And you heard it right. Bryce Mitchell came out of the gates swinging on his first podcast. We got to get into that. Also, coming up, Dana White and Jake Paul back at it. Jake Paul's always criticizing the UFC. What do you have to say? Khamzat Chimaev makes huge promise to UFC fans ahead of Dricus du Plessis fight. Of course, Sean Strickland in the news for blasting Khamzat Chimaev. So you got all that going on, and we got to get in to each of these topics. But first and foremost, I mean, the internet is blowing. It's just going crazy. I mean, the internet is buzzing because Bryce Mitchell said the former German leader, whose name I need not mention, you know who he is, was a good guy in shameful rant. He says, I honestly think he was a good guy based on my own research, not my public education. And by now you've heard this story, so let's just get into it. I mean, it's a crazy thought to have. It's a wild statement to make. People are up in arms. Dana White even responding, which is rare, but paused when he said, would he, do something to Bryce Mitchell, like, maybe a suspension or something like that. But Dana White is on record, no matter what anyone says about their country, religion, all that they all have the right to free speech, and he holds firm on that, but totally disagreeing, obviously, with what Bryce Mitchell had to say again on his very first podcast. So that's kind of the point too that I want to make, is that it's his first podcast. He's trying to say some outlandish stuff to get noticed. And boy, did he accomplish that goal. Because in the world we live in right now, good news is good news. Bad news is also good news because it's all from a publicity standpoint. Even if it's something negative or bad or wrong, if people are talking about you and your podcast, what are people looking up right now? They're looking up Bryce Mitchell's podcast. So my man came out of the gate swinging. I don't agree with what he said, but I know that people are going to watch his podcast now. And so at the end of the day, he wins, we lose. And that's all there is to it, because, we're forced to talk about it. It's a big story. And Bryce Mitchell got exactly what he wanted. And it doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. He got what he wanted. And that's the bottom line. So go ahead, Bryce Mitchell. I guess do what you got to do to get the views that you want to get. But I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, it really is crazy.
Whoa!
I mean, you could make wild statements like that and honestly believe it. Now, I understand he did his own research. He did all those things, but you have to look, even if you're slanted that way big time, totally over there totally think he was a good guy, which is hard to even understand or believe, you still got to look at the final result of what he did to the human race.
Ooh-wee.
I mean, he just took people out, man. He took people out.
Ooh-wee.
And I don't know how you go down as a good guy. And no matter what you're teaching yourself, denouncing is public education, right? But see, the thing with public education is you have the right, as a youngster, when you're being taught, to debate. But a lot of times when we're youngsters in that setting, we don't want to debate. We don't really necessarily care when we're young about history and all those things. It's like as we get older, especially when you have kids, you start to look at things a little differently. You start to really peek into things, and your interest peaks at a later age when it comes to historical events, because you kind of want to know how you got here. Like for me, it was when my grandfather passed away, and he had the Purple Heart, and then I got it, and I found out that he was involved in all that on the side of America, obviously, and took shrapnel in the heart and got the Purple Heart, and it was given down to me. So I naturally am like, I want to research more about this and know more, right? As you get older, these things tend to happen. When you're a youngster, some care, but we don't care enough a lot of times, most of us, myself included, to want to publicly debate, because that means we actually, we have to really research and learn and care about it. And sometimes when you're young, you just don't care about history yet. So, when he says, I think he was a good guy, and this is based on my own research, not my public education. Well, public education is just that, it's public. And you have the right to debate. And I think in terms of public education, we should all be encouraging debate, because if you're debating, you're learning. Even if you're wrong, you're going to be wrong when you're young too. You're going to be, as we see, you're wrong when you get older. But by just debating and opening up the floor for debate and encouraging debate means that someone has to research something and they're learning something. So it's hard to denounce public education when really public education is what you make of it. You can go into school every day and say, I don't care, I don't want to be here. Or you can go in and say, you know what, I'm here. There's money that's being given to me to be here, to pay for the bus drivers, teachers, and the cooks, and principals, and county personnel, and state personnel, and federal government personnel. And since I'm getting that money, and I'm getting here, I'm also being fed while I'm here. I might as well learn something. I might as well debate and ask questions. And I think sometimes in public education, we're kind of scared to get into topics, but we got to, for the sake of the kids, so that they can debate. And don't even be slanted about it. That's hard for me. If I'm not a history teacher, but if I was, that might be hard for me. But as a teacher, you got to kind of step back and let them debate, and step in as the middleman and encourage it and say, well, think about this, and maybe you think about that, and okay, go. 3 to 5 minutes later, help control the discussion by calling on people. What do you think? What do you think? And encouraging debate. So if you're denouncing public education, then it is what you made it. Maybe you didn't debate when you were that age. You might have learned more. I encourage you, especially youngsters, debate with your teachers, not to try to upstage them. I'm saying ask questions. Debate with your fellow classmates. Well, what do you think? Well, this is what I think. Oh, no, I don't agree with that. Well, let's talk about it. That's what we need. Public education is what you make of it. And obviously, Bryce Mitchell didn't make much of it based on those comments. Now, next week, let's get back into the UFC, into the actual fights, right? In the UFC, at UFC 312 next Saturday night, you got Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. You guys all know this. Big middleweight showdown for the title. But I think a lot of people are really more curious about the next fight, and that's who will win and face Khamzat Chimaev. Well, Sean Strickland, ahead of his fight, has some harsh words for Chimaev going right in, saying, "You're not a man, right? You're not a man." And he says, after I'm done with Chimaev, he's going to go back to peddling crypto, talking about the crypto scams or whatnot. So he's going right in on Khamzat. But my thing with this is, I don't like when I see fighters do this. They usually lose, right? Because Strickland's focus should be on Dricus. You don't need to sell the Khamzat fight. That fight will sell itself. You have to go beat Dricus first. Dricus is already on record as saying, I want to fight Khamzat, right? So Dricus and Khamzat should be fighting right now, but Sean Strickland gets a shot, and he's worried about Khamzat when he should be worried about Dricus du Plessis. Because we all know what Khamzat will do to Sean Strickland. And if you don't, you might just get your wish. Khamzat Chimaev makes huge promise to UFC fans, saying 2025, I will take this belt, and no one can stop it. This coming via his Instagram account. So that's what we want to hear. 2025 is right now. And this is the year that Khamzat gets the belt, right in his prime, at 30 years old. Should have got it at 28, 29, but you know what? We get a more seasoned Khamzat now, right? When he gets the title fight, he's more likely to win it now. 30 is the perfect age. You're in full strength for the next 3 to 5 years. So let's go get it. Let's make it happen. And I'm just excited about the whole middleweight division altogether, especially with Adesanya and Mayvov coming up. Jake Paul on All the Smoke fight, I believe. Success of Alex Pereira proves UFC is a bad version of boxing under failed vision of Dana White. So he's going in on Alex Pereira, but really Dana White saying MMA is not what it is, or what it was, excuse me. That's the truth of the matter. Boxing is bigger than ever. That's all you need to know. The rest of what he said doesn't matter. Okay. Boxing has collapsed. Not many of you can tell me who is the second and third fight in any boxing situation. Except when Jake Paul, when he had his undercard with the two girls fighting. That was obviously big time. But other than that, in most boxing throughout the year, you can't tell me who's the second or third fight. But in the UFC, you could tell me who the 6th and 7th and 10th fight is in a lot of cases. So this doesn't make any sense. Dana White has dominated the space. Everybody's feeling the pressure that Dana White's coming into boxing. Not Jake Paul, because Jake Paul is a one-man show. Whoever he's fighting, it's going to sell. He's a different person, but this is not actual boxing like an actual UFC. This would be like a guy, I don't know, maybe a big WWE guy coming over, not even to UFC, to just do a one-off fight with an MMA fighter and selling at an arena or something. It'd have to be a huge name, but it's not even an actual UFC fight. That's what Jake Paul's doing. Okay, you can call it an MMA fight. You can call Jake Paul's a boxing fight. It's official. But if you're not fighting in the UFC, if you're Jake Paul and you're not fighting real boxers, how can you even say what you're saying? You don't have legitimacy yet. Now, take nothing away from Jake Paul. There's not a person on the planet that can't say they're surprised from 5 years ago that Jake Paul's sitting where he's sitting and beating some of the names he beat. Yeah, they're not boxers, but they are UFC fighters that can throw. And you would think would be able to get in there against the Jake Paul and just dominate him. And the fact that Jake Paul dominated them shows you that he's for real. But to move to the next level and back up all these statements that you're making, you got to make the jump to an actual real boxing fight. That's the bottom line. You got to make the jump into actual professional boxing against a professional boxer. That's the bottom line. Or you're not legitimate. 49ers Faithful says, yo, what up, Chris? Not much, man. We just chilling, getting into all the topics today. And it's good to see you in the chat room. Now, speaking of chat, let's get to the Q&A, shall we? Let's get to the Q&A. And a lot of good comments and questions coming in. This one is UFC 312, Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez. Truth Bringer says this is a bad matchup for Weili. If Suarez comes in healthy, I don't see how Tatiana doesn't beat her, more or less. And yeah, I mean, I really think Tatiana's got a good opportunity to win the belt here. Very good fighter. We all know what Zhang Weili can do, but this is more about, because of that, it's more about Tatiana Suarez and is she the future of the division for the next, 1 to 2 to maybe 3 years. Very possible. I kind of think the MMA community hopes that's what happens. We need someone like an Amanda Nunes to come in and win the belt and then win a few fights and keep the belt in one fighter's hands for like 3 to 5 title defenses and make a name for yourself. It's very possible. Or she could just walk in there and lose, and then it takes all that hype away. But if she keeps winning, the hype just continues to build. So I'm pulling for her, and I think she can win. 619ers says Umar was winning. Umar Nurmagomedov, that is, and I believe only lost because he messed up his hand. Can't imagine striking after breaking or doing what he did in the second round. So, he's fighting with an injury at that point is what Niners is saying. And, that makes it difficult. And you see the turn or change in the fight in round 3, and then you get into the championship rounds, and it's even worse because now you're in Merab Dvalishvili's domain. Like he's used to being there. No big deal. And the fight just completely swung. 2 rounds to none for Umar, then 3-0 for Merab, and he keeps the belt with one official at 4-1. Speaking of Alex Pereira, Magomed Ankalaev, big light heavyweight showdown for the title finally. Dale, I believe, 000, says, I agree with your statement. And who knows what that means, because I don't remember what I said. Probably in about 20 minutes, I'm not going to remember anything I said. It's on my mind, and then I get it off. That's why I like the podcast, get it off my mind. Boom. Go into the house and stream a little series and get lost in that. But in terms of that fight, come on, Pereira's got to win that one, right? So I'm hoping that's what you're agreeing with, because I'm sure that's what I said. 49ers faithful back again in the comments section all over the place. This fight night is better than upcoming UFC 312, in my opinion. I saw this the other day. I'm glad we got this one. And I took a look at it when I saw that comment. I was like, all right, let me go fight by fight. And I'm like, you know what? You get into fight 6 and 7, it's pretty deep at Saudi Arabia. Now, when this fight's done, we tend to then look forward, and we don't look in the rear view too much except for the big fights. But right now, this fight card is deep, man. And so I got to agree with you. Now, when we break down 312, I'm going to remember this comment and look back and say, in hindsight, of course, but let's see how Saudi Arabia goes down. But it's probably going to be a wild crowd, and people are going to be pumped up for it, for sure. In terms of John Jones and Tom Aspinall, Dana likes money more. And I guess right now you're saying that more money is coming with John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Okay, we'll see. John Jones is starting to call for Alex Pereira. And I don't know what John Jones is thinking. It's the same with Alex Pereira. So people are saying both of these guys are worried about Tom Aspinall. They're worried about the contenders in both of these fights, in Aspinall and Ankalaev. That John Jones and Pereira are worried about these guys. That's why they keep turning towards each other. I don't know. I can't get a read on it. I like to feel like Pereira's not worried about it and John Jones isn't worried about it, because these are 2 alpha males. So who knows? But it does seem like they do want to fight each other. But Pereira is tied up right now, so we'll see. By Alex says, Alexander Topuria will win by finish. I'm 100% sure. As of January 25, I will come back 8 February. Leaving dates. Saving receipts. I hear you, man. But it's just something about Cody Haddon. I can't go against him right now. But I feel what you're saying. Brett Bunker. I don't think so. MVP is faster, and I don't think the kicks will be that effective at that range. Page fights. Talking about Michael Venom Page. Also, he's a slow starter. His best chance is if he goes to the latter rounds. I think the lack of depth is going to be a big problem against MVP. And for sure, I mean, MVP has that awkward style, right? He's hard to get a read on. And I think MVP has a chance against anybody except the guy that puts pressure on him. And Shar is a guy that can do that, right? Shar is a guy that can put pressure on you and create chaos and can match the chaos that's going to come by way of MVP with the awkward style and the constant head movement and all that. You know, we saw him in the last fight kind of get slowed down from that. And it leads me to believe that Shar can get the job done in this fight because I believe he's going to apply that pressure. And that's kind of what the thinking is with the prediction, is that Shara is going to find a way to win this fight. But listen, that's what we got, man. Quick, in and out. We weren't even supposed to do this today, but you know, Bryce Mitchell went off and everyone's talking about it. So you know what that means. We got to talk about it. That's how it goes. But for now, it's your boy Chris Cross. I appreciate you watching. Hit the like button, share this video. But most importantly, if you're not a subscriber, click that subscribe button. And until next time, have a great day and God bless. As always, peace.